What is up, everybody? I am HoopsandHipHop, and welcome to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. Now, today is kind of going to be, I always say this, it's going to be an interesting episode, but this one in particular, which I always feel like I say as well, is going to be particularly interesting, but I really mean it this time, guys. I feel like we talk about interesting things, but I really feel like the emphasis is on this episode, so I'll try not to repeat myself next time. But yeah, we always talk about interesting stuff. Anyways, the reason why it's so interesting is not only the subject matter we're going to get into today, but also how it came about. I was completely just not sure what to talk about in today's podcast because the past few weeks, we've always had something Pokemon related going on in that week. Like last week, we talked about Twilight Wings, which premiered. The week before, we had the expansion pass to go over. We've had things kind of going on in Pokemon that have been really kind of just fun to talk to. But this week, we're kind of dry on the news, and so there really wasn't anything current event-wise to talk about, and when there's nothing brand new current event-wise as far as the podcast goes, it can be really difficult to find a discussion topic because, as most of you probably know, I have my own YouTube channel where I talk completely about Pokemon. I do 3 videos a week, and that can be challenging enough in and of itself to get 3 genuinely good, interesting topics every week. So to add something in a podcast that I'm not talking about on top of that on my own channel, it's it can be difficult sometimes. So I was just really I did not know what to talk about today. I was really just racking my brain, but then all of a sudden it came to me. And when it came to me, I was like, how did I not think about that before? That would be a great topic for the podcast. And that is the topic of Temtem, and basically Temtem versus Pokemon. If you don't know what Temtem is, and by the way, before we get into all of this, I do need to thank our sponsors of the podcast once again, because as you might know if you heard the last podcast, we now have sponsors for the podcast. It supports the channel, it supports the shows, and is greatly, greatly appreciated. So I want to go ahead and thank them because today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Tax season is here, and that means it's time to file your taxes. There's good news though, because if you're a W-2 employee, you can save half off of your filing. All you have to do is call, the Tax Defense Group before April 15th, 2020, and mention that you heard this ad on UCast Studios. Millions of Americans are going to get money back after they file, and you can be one of them if you call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973, and again, that number is 800-850-7973, or you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Also, this episode is brought to you as well by Writer Junkie. If you're looking to make more money in 2020, one of the best ways to do that is by having a brand new resume that can help you get that dream job. Writer Junkie offers affordable, well-written resumes for the low cost of just $145. They are even going to throw in a cover letter for you at no additional charge as well, and all you have to do is mention that you saw this ad on UCast Studios, and they will go ahead and get right to work for you. So if you're interested in that, you can call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online as well at writerjunkie.com. But with that being said, as I said, if you haven't heard of what Temtem is, essentially it's a Pokemon clone in a nutshell. And it basically came out, I believe it was earlier this week that it's pre-release or alpha. I believe it's the alpha mode. It came out on Steam. It is projected it's going to eventually be coming out on all systems, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, when the final version launches. But right now that it's in beta or whatever, it's only on Steam. And yeah, like I said, it came out earlier this week, and I had kind of been hearing about it before that, because obviously anytime a Pokemon clone comes up and anyone tries to tackle the Pokemon formula or compete with Pokemon, it's going to be noteworthy just because it's taken on Pokemon. So that came out, and originally I just wrote it off. I didn't care at all because obviously there's been a million games over the years that try to copy Pokemon essentially, and they all just crash and burn because they're trying to copy Pokemon. They're not providing anything original. There's no legitimate like competition there. The one in recent memory that actually had some success was Yokai Watch. Yokai Watch is super big in Japan. It finally came over to the West several years ago, and like it did okay. Like obviously it got a couple sequels, and I believe there's one that's going to be coming out on the Switch. And so like it's had modest success, but nothing in the way of remotely challenging Pokemon at all, at least in the West. And I don't even think in Japan, for as popular as it is, it doesn't even really challenge Pokemon. So like, even though we've seen a lot of games like this, but none that have really like done anything in terms of like compete with Pokemon, even though that's what they're trying to do. But all of a sudden, once this game came out, basically a bunch of people jumped on it. I think the intrigue, the curiosity of it all got people to like at least give it a look, because once again, it's like Pokemon, and basically it started to get a pretty good following. People started to enjoy it. A lot of people were playing it, and obviously thanks to social media, the word got out really fast, and a lot of people just hopped on. So much so, in fact, that their servers actually got to capacity, because another thing about the game is that it's an MMO, so basically you have tons of people playing online at the same time, and then all the people playing will like pop in your game and stuff. So it got so popular that the servers got filled up, and they had some like issues with that, which is good for them. That's awesome. But today I basically wanted to talk about the game itself, what I think about it, and how, like, I guess it stacks up to Pokemon, because everyone's like, oh, this is, like, I mean, it's mostly just YouTube clickbait type of stuff, but, like, people are like, this game is already better than Pokemon. This, like, is Game Freak's wake-up call, yada, yada, yada. And basically, I'm just going to give my opinion on that battle, if there even is one, and just go over all my personal opinions and thoughts about this whole thing. So, to start off, I have not played the game myself. I went ahead and watched a walkthrough on YouTube just so I could basically get the gist of what was going on, even though I haven't played it, so I can be informed when I'm talking to you guys about this. And through that walkthrough, it basically confirmed what I felt like I already knew before I had even watched it, and that is that I would not call this a Pokemon clone. I would call it a straight up Pokemon ripoff. Like, it is the thing that turns me off the most about this game, is that it is so unbelievably just like shamelessly like just ripping off Pokemon. It's not even funny, which really begs the question, like, how this like could be legal, because like on the one hand, Pokemon, they don't own like obviously they sort of invented the monster catching game or collecting genre, if you will, but they don't necessarily own it. So there can be other monster catching games, collecting games. Like, there can be games that are inspired by Pokemon, because as we know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So games can be inspired by, they can be similar to, like, that's all well and good. But in my opinion, this game just takes it way, 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 way past the point of inspiration and to the point of just like actual plagiarism. Like, it's legitimately like that is legitimately what's going on, because not only do you have the basic concept of there's a bunch of creatures that you catch and collect and everything, but you start at your house, you have a mom, and you only have a mom. She gives you literally what is a Pokedex equivalently in this game. It's just named slightly differently. It's called the Tempedia. You've got a rival who is a jerk rival, as we know is a staple in Pokemon. You have a professor that gives you a choice between one of the three starter Temtem. You've got even like right down to some of the moves that the Temtem have. Just like in Pokemon, they have HP, attack, special attack, so like all of that is the same. And then even some of the names of the moves are the same. Like, you have Peck, you have Hypnosis, you even have Psywave, which like Hypnosis and Peck, obviously those are kind of a little more generic, so like even though it is the exact same, like it's not super crazy, but Psywave, that's a word that like I feel like is a little more unique compared to things like Hypnosis and Peck, but even still, it's there, it's in the game. And so there's like other things, like there's wild, like there's tall grass you run through to find the Temtem. Like, there's really nothing about this that, at least from what I saw, I do want to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to this game because as I said, it's an alpha right now, so it's not like a complete game, and it's an indie game as well, so it's not like it's got the backing of a huge studio that's got like $1 million to work with or something. So I'm gonna give it like a fair shake basically in this comparison because of those factors. But in terms of just originality, like there's nothing about their situation that limits their originality. They could have been as original as they wanted to be with this game, even if it was inspired by Pokemon. And in my opinion, they did not do any of that. Like, it is so identically similar to Pokemon that, like I said, I would really be interested to know what crosses the line in terms of plagiarism, or if this qualifies as plagiarism and like they just don't want to like pursue it because Nintendo doesn't think it's worth the money. Like, I just don't know. I would really be interested to know because, like I said, it's coming out on all systems once it's complete. So, like, it's already confirmed to be coming out on the Switch. So, obviously, Nintendo is, like, cool with it to a degree, which I don't know. I just don't know how that works because I definitely would have thought that this would kind of be in the realm of just, like it would be copying, it would be enough of a ripoff, like I said, for Game Freak to be able to take legal action. Like, I would think, but I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know. But yeah, I just don't think it's very that's the biggest turnoff for me, is this game is not just inspired by Pokemon. It is trying to be Pokemon, and it is copying Pokemon in every single way. And while, one last caveat, it could get more different as the game goes along, like in terms of like getting into the game itself, because I didn't go through the whole game. I just kind of watched enough to really get a feel for it. And so that could be the case. I could be wrong, like it could get way different as things go on, but I assume for most of the game, it's going to be basically that core system, which once again, way too similar. And that was the biggest turnoff for me about this, is that like to me, when something is like shamelessly like just ripping off, like whether it be Pokemon or maybe another video game like Zelda or Mario or something like that, to me, like it goes from imitation is the sincerest form of flattery to disrespect, because you're trying to steal my concept or you're trying to steal their concept that they have worked really hard on, that they came up with originally themselves, and you're just trying to make a quick buck off it because people like it and it's already established. Like, that to me is like, as a game developer, that would be disrespectful, and I just don't think that's a good look at all, and so that really turns me off about the game. I'm not a fan of that. That's why I originally wrote it off in the first place, because it looked like another one of those rip-off things, and it proved to be that way, at least to me. And then the other thing that's kind of a turn-off to me, like, it kind of is, but there's also some good qualities about it, is the whole like art style of the game. There are, like, in some parts of the game, like I would say the overworld, for instance, and the like some of the creatures themselves, it looks clean. Like, there are parts of the game that do look nice and fresh and like good, but for the most part, the impression I get from the art style is that it looks like it has a very cheap element to it. Like, there are instances where you look at it and you're like, man, this is really cheap. And then it kind of just looks like very washed out as well, to the point where there's not a lot of like distinction between the grass, the earth, the characters. Like, there isn't a lot of like, the art style is such that there's not a whole lot of shading or different things like that going on. So it kind of all just like blends together sometimes in a mess and makes things look not as good as they could. And so you get these moments where you're like, okay, this part looks really good, this looks really clean, but then there's other parts where you're like, man, like, this really does look like a cheap knockoff. Like, this definitely looks like what you'd expect a cheap ripoff of Pokemon to look like. It genuinely does. I don't know how hot of a take this is going to be. I assume maybe it'd be somewhat controversial because of how much people are seeming to enjoy the game, but that is genuinely how I feel. I don't feel like the game is original enough to really be able to stand on its own 2 feet as its own thing to be able to compete with Pokemon at all. And then I just feel like it's cheap. It doesn't look like, oh, this is good quality. It looks like, oh yeah, this is kind of cheap. Granted, like I said, I will give them the benefit of the doubt because the game's not done yet, so they could finish things and bring things up to speed and whatnot. But at the same time, I feel like in these sort of beta situations, you're going to know pretty well what the game has to offer, even if it does change some. So yeah, I just don't feel like it's got a whole lot going for it in that aspect. But once again, before we move on into the second half of our discussion here, just want to shout out once again, Tax Defense Group, Writer Junkie. If you guys need help with your taxes, want to get them done for cheap, call the Tax Defense Group, 800-850-7973, or you can visit them online, taxdefensegroup.com, as well as Writer Junkie. Check them out online or at their phone number, 805-587-7966, if you want some help with your resume or different things like that. Once again, shout out to them. But taking this forward and comparing it to Pokemon, I find it like, once again, I said all those headlines like, this is the new Pokemon. Pokemon has competition. Like, this is already better than Pokemon. Those are all like clickbait things that people are just throwing out there to get you to click on their article or their video or whatever. So none of those are really like concretely true. But like, if anyone did actually legitimately think that this was any kind of like this was already better than Pokemon, like I would have to like humbly, like completely and wholeheartedly disagree here, because it's just like what I saw in this game, even though it's the alpha and even though like I didn't go through the whole experience, I just got a good chunk of it. Like, it can't be better than Pokemon if it is Pokemon. Like, it literally just is Pokemon point for point, and it doesn't do anything differently, at least not right now. Once again, could always in the future as it develops, but right now it's not doing anything differently to be better. Like, you have monsters, you catch them, you store them in a Pokedex, you have a rival character who's a jerk, you get it from the professor, you catch wild Pokemon in the grass. Like, there isn't anything about this that is any different from Pokemon, so it can't be better. By, like, logic, it can't be better. Like, you can't even say graphically that it's better. It's definitely not better looking than Pokemon Sword and Shield, I'll tell you that. So in terms of that fight, like, no one, realistically, like I said, this is an indie game, so no one's really expecting them to, like, duke it out. Like, Pokemon is not actually going to have to go to battle with an indie game. No one's really expecting that. Once again, like I said, it's just for the clicks. But, like, definitively after, like, comparing the two, just because that's the thing that everyone's doing right now, and that's the whole reason we're talking about this on this episode, there's no comparison. Like, in order for there to be a comparison, this game has got to do something original. It's got to do something unique. It's got to do something that it can actually, like, compare Pokemon to. Like I said, it's doing nothing differently than Pokemon, so until it changes that up and actually does something different, it will be nothing more than just a knockoff, and a fairly cheap knockoff at that. I don't see it any other way. I just don't think the game has really anything to offer originally, and I just don't think, I don't know, I just don't feel like it's way too much of a ripoff to gain my respect. That's just the honest truth. I'm not trying to be mean. I just think it's not doing anything remotely original enough or remotely good enough for me to really say, yeah, this is good. Now, granted, that's not to say that you can't have fun with the game, because the game inherently, as a Pokemon clone, is going to have the Pokemon concept. And so if you like the Pokemon concept, if you like the idea of catching creatures, traveling around a world and battling people, and if you like that type of game, then you're probably going to have fun with it, because that's what the game is. Like, it's copying Pokemon, so it's going to obviously have some of the Pokemon experience to it. So yeah, you could definitely have fun with it. And if Nintendo is apparently okay with it, because it's going to be on the Nintendo Switch, then, I mean, like, you don't have to like freak out and like demand, like boycott it yourself, I guess, like because you think it's copying Pokemon or you feel like it's copying Pokemon. Like if you want to try it out, go ahead and try it out, because like this game this week has kind of established itself as a thing, and it definitely, if you're a Pokemon fan, is something that could appeal to you. So it absolutely, like in terms of gameplay, could be a good game, but in terms of like providing, once again, an original product that actually does something like that it brings to the table, that it actually has to offer, that it isn't just ripping off from Pokemon, to me, there's nothing here. There's nothing here that it's giving me that provides a unique experience. Like the whole time I was watching the walkthroughs on YouTube to get a good idea for it so I could talk about it here, it was just point for point Pokemon. It was absolutely 100% just this is Pokemon, this is Pokemon, this is Pokemon, even down to the progression of how the game was moving forward. It was all taken exactly from Pokemon, like not even really like changed up that much. And that's like, as a huge Pokemon fan, once again, I sort of like take offense to that in a way. So that's why I'm just like not remotely interested in it, because if you're just going to like take this concept and not even try to change it at all, and not even try to make it your own, and just basically take all of the ideas from this thing that you're inspired by, quote unquote, like I have no real like, I can't give you any like praise for that. I can't give you praise for basically just stealing an idea. Like, and that's like, even if it is technically legal in the vein that they're doing it and it's approved by Nintendo or things like that, just in my personal view, I can't personally give respect to a game that is doing those types of things. I genuinely can't. And then it doesn't help, like I said, that the art style isn't very appealing to me, doesn't look very good in my opinion. And then one more thing I didn't like about the game, and this is like no fault of it being a Pokemon clone or anything like that, is the fact that it is an MMO. I probably just am not a fan of MMOs for this reason. So once again, nothing against the game specifically, but like with it being an MMO, there's tons of people on the screen because it's an MMO. There's people playing with you right then and there that are going to show up on your game. Like they're not just NPCs, they're actual players. And that puts a lot of people on your screen that are running all over the place. And I just think it looks way too busy. I think having all of those people on your screen at one time running all over the place, really not serving much of a purpose, especially when the game is about you progressing forward and it has somewhat of a story to it, and it's supposed to be like, once again, more of that Pokemon experience where there is a plot, there is a story, like you're supposed to move forward in more of a single player experience. Like, I don't know, that like having a bunch of people there just gets in the way of that. We did see a little bit of a sort of an MMO element like this in Pokemon Sword and Shield, where in the wild area, if you were online, people would pop up. But in my opinion, Pokemon did it the perfect way that a game like this should do it, in that there was an area of space within the game that was limited to this experience. And that is the only place you could have this experience, so the rest of the region was yours and yours alone. And then if you were offline, you could obviously turn that off. And that could very well be the case with Temtem 2, which would definitely solve the problem for me personally. But I feel like Pokemon even did this better because they had it contained to one single area. And then even in that area, even when it was on, I never ever felt like there were too many people on the screen and, oh, this is too busy, this is too much. And I never felt overwhelmed by that. But in this experience with Temtem, the way they did it, I just felt like it was instantly overwhelming, because it just felt instantly busy. It felt instantly too much. Whereas with Pokemon's version of it in Sword and Shield, I didn't feel that way. That, once again, like, some of that is execution, and I will give credit to Pokemon for that, but most of that is just going to be, hey, I'm not a fan of MMOs, so nothing against the game, just something about the genre I didn't like. But overall, that is my opinion of Temtem in a nutshell. Like, if it's got the approval of Nintendo and it's all legal and everything, like, by all means, I guess, like, do your thing. Like, obviously, the people who made this obviously are fans of Pokemon. They have the ambition to make a game of their own. Good for them. But it rips off too much of the game, and it rips it off too identically. Like, if this game were to take some elements and then do the other half of the game, like their own thing, original, like all that stuff, then I could give it a legitimate, like, I could give it a legitimate handshake, like I said, and say, go for it, like, do your thing, like, do the best you can sort of situation. But, like, I just genuinely, like, I can't bring myself to respect a game that is, like, this identical and is, like, ripping off this much and not trying to change it up. So ultimately, that is my opinion. We'll see what happens with this as it goes along, as it continues to develop, as it gets closer to its official release, and we'll see how it continues to evolve and grow in terms of popularity, and if it falls off or if it keeps up or anything like that. But with that being said, that's pretty much going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you're new to the channel or the podcast, be sure to follow wherever you're listening. If you're on YouTube, you can let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel or followed me anywhere yet, you can do so. Hoops and Hip Hop, basically everywhere: YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. Definitely follow me for more Pokemon content as well. With that being said, though, I'll be back on next Friday for another episode, obviously, so I will very much look forward to that, and I will look forward to seeing you here as well at that time. And until then, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you guys have a great next week, and until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.